My guest on the podcast this time out is Adam Hope, frontman of Newcastle band The Pale White, whose album is out today. The Big Sad, their second album, out April the 18th, which is today. We spoke about the album, we spoke about the band's career coming up, and what's going on in the music industry. We had a really candid chat about kind of some of the pitfalls within music, so it was nice to kind of touch on that. And obviously at the end, Adam picked his heroes to come for dinner. All this and tons more. Hope you're all enjoying the podcast. Please keep liking, commenting, sharing and subscribing wherever you can. But more importantly, enjoy. We both joke this will come if you stay. On the podcast today, I've got Adam Hope, frontman of Newcastle band The Pale White. The Pale White are due to release their second album, The Big Sad, Friday the 18th of April. That's right? Which is next Friday if we're talking today, but probably the time the podcast comes out, it might be more current. It might be a couple of days away or whatever. But everybody go and check out The Big Sad. And we're going to talk about that. But before we talk about that, Adam, I'd like to go back to the start. What was life like for a young Adam growing up in Newcastle as a young pup?
It was, I guess, what you'd call pretty normal. In Newcastle, you go to school, you don't really know what you want to do with your life. I think a lot of the times as well in school, everyone seemed to have like a plan. I didn't have a plan. I just wanted to play music, and it sounds so cliche, but that is it's quite literally all we've wanted to do. I speak there for like me and Jack being my brother. We used to like, our neighbors must have hated us basically because we had a drum kit in Jack's room. And selfishly, it was the room that was like next door to like the semi-detachment, So like whoever had the
Mm-hmm.
bedroom next door must have absolutely hated us. But yeah, I mean, it was always music, It was just always music. That there's nothing much more to say. We lived a relatively normal life. We played for our local football teams and stuff like that, but ultimately it was music. And then post school, I did music at college. Thought maybe I'm making a mistake here because like I didn't feel like I was necessarily surrounded by like-minded people. I still felt like it was people who were maybe just treating it as like a bit of a gap year. It's just a bit of fun after school, like, oh, I play guitar, I might go here. But then I ended up meeting some very like-minded people, like Dean Thompson from Sam Fender's band. We went to college together. Um, and a few other friends that I still speak to today, and because like I say, it's the like-mindedness. Um, so yeah, I mean, I feel like I really sort of came out of my shell coming into my early 20s because I was in a band coming out of school, and I was always a little bit embarrassed to even admit I played guitar in school because like it was always just like I say the like-mindedness. There was no one. There was one guy in my year like the same music as me, but still he was just a bit like you're never gonna make it. A classic, but yeah, it wasn't until I got in my early 20s, I'd been on like the music scene a little bit. A very good friend of mine, who is now the Alex Opal outfit, who is he's basically like a songwriter producer that has like a soul band in Newcastle, and they're just starting out, but they're on the cusp of something really special. They've got like amazing support from like Craig Charles and stuff on Six Music. But anyways,
Right.
he was probably the first guy for me that on the music scene. I met and like I was like we were really on the same page about what we wanted to do in life, and he just so happened to be in a takeaway one night and had to go on the punch bag and broke his hand. So before we'd even had a proper conversation together, like we'd like support each other's bands and stuff, but we became great friends when he asked me to play guitar in his band, and very shortly after, his management moved us to London, and we just sort of dusted about in London for a year, and that was when I
Right.
was like 20. And it was sorry, this does have a point because it wasn't until I moved to London and I had all the spare time on my hands that I started demoing stuff for the project that was first called Sundance.
Mm-hmm.
In 2015, I moved back from London and I welcomed Jack in as the drummer, and what was Tom Booth as what was Tom Booth? Tom Booth as the bassist. And we spent about 8 months gigging around town, playing everything we could, playing every venue we could, every show we could, playing like the same venues 3 times a week. Till eventually we got, some serious interest, changed the name. Bob's your uncle, you've got the pale white.
So, what was the reason for the name change and why?
Well, it was a cross between the name wasn't very good. I mean, I started doing the demos in my bedroom and releasing them on, like SoundCloud and posting to Facebook. And then when you suddenly get the sort of reassurance from people going like, actually, this is really good, and I'm like, oh, okay. Like maybe I should like turn this into a band and stuff. And it was always under the name Sundance.
Hmm.
But yeah, I just think I'm kind of glad we had that period of like gigging around under a different name because we sort of I think as a young band, a lot of people get attention too soon and they have to go through the teething problems in the limelight. So it was nice to go through all the your first gigs and getting the more rubbish songs out the way and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm glad we got to do that under a different name and then sort of like really fulfill our destiny as the Pale White and start that in 2016.
So obviously, you kind of mentioned kind of the scene in Newcastle at the time. So like you touched on, like you had pals like for Sam Fender's band and stuff like that. So were you kind of coming up around about the same time as Sam Fender? And how do you think like the Newcastle scene has progressed by like 10 years ago when you kind of began to where it is now?
Yeah, yeah. Me and so when I was just leaving school, I used to do a buskers night at the Linskill Centre in North Shields called Club a Go-Go. And it would be the sort of thing where they'd have a house band, and if you were a young musician, you could get up and play a song with them. So like I was obsessed with like sitting in my room noodling to Jimi Hendrix, well, the Leaves, but Jimi Hendrix's version of Hey Joe. It is the Leaves, isn't it? The original Hey Joe.
Hmm.
Anyways, I used to get up and play that with him. And there was this other lad that used to get up and play, and sometimes with his own band, and it was Sam Fender, and his first band, the Mojags, who the drummer for was a local band, who supported us recently called Django Flash. So it was like a melting pot of like musicians at that point doing different things. And yeah, I'll never forget my first interaction with Sam. Like he was like he had this Les Paul, and he was like chucking it up and down his hands, going like, "It's my baby, it's my baby." Um, and yeah, yeah, but me and Sam became friends, and we saw each other on the music scene quite often. You could even call it like a friendly rivalry of two bands that like sort of,
Hmm.
well, when I was in my first band and he was in his first band, it was like, but I love that thing about a music scene. You've got that camaraderie, but you've also got this sort of like, you know, um,
Yeah, there needs to be that competition as well, didn't
yeah,
there?
exactly,
It spurs everybody on.
yeah, it's healthy, isn't it? It's like, you're always wanting to like. I guess in a way, like when you're on the music scene, everyone's fighting for the same thing. Do you know what I mean? It's
Mm.
everyone's got the same targets. But the thing is, ultimately along the way, you all help each other out and stuff as well. That's where the camaraderie is, and that's the beautiful thing about a music scene. Like we are all aiming for the same thing, but it doesn't mean that only one person has to have it. You know what I mean? So,
Well,
um,
that's it. I mean, like guests, I've had Andrew Cushion on. I've had a couple of bands, Bear Park and Park View.
mhm,
So all three of them are for Newcastle as well.
mhm,
Um, I mean, as far as I was concerned back in the day, it was like Maximal Park and the Future Heads were the only kind of bands for around about that area. And like all of a sudden, it's kind of kicked off
mhm.
through Sam Fender and yourself, and then all these other acts coming in. Like touching on the football, I hear this a lot. Do you think kind of the fact that the football team kind of has been resurrected, do you think that has some sort of impact on the music scene as well?
I don't necessarily feel like it correlates with the music scene because the music scene's always been there, and what I will say is though, I mean, the city has never felt a better place to be in. There's just like a good mood because like the thing is with Newcastle fans is they are like die hard. You know what I mean? They are like they've watched their team like lose for so many years. Let's face it, like sometimes on the
Hmm.
relegation and stuff, and it's like, but that stadium is full to the brim, week in, week out, with diehard fans that would die for their team. And I've seen that throughout my whole life. Even like we're going back to school and stuff. Like I've never known, because I know other people that support different teams and stuff, but the passion that people have for their team, I've never seen it like Newcastle. Do you know what I mean? It's incredible to see, and to finally see the the lads lift the trophy after 70 years of nothingness is just like it's been incredible. But I'm not sure if it necessarily correlates with the music scene. Because like I say, the music scene has always been there, and Newcastle doing good or bad hasn't really like reflected on people making music. Uh,
Mm.
but yeah, you are right. For a long time, you would say the bands that were from Newcastle would be, you've got the Police, Miss Sting, you've got
Yeah,
Brian Johnson's AC/DC, and then you think like Maximo Park Futureheads and stuff. I mean, I think they're from Sunderland.
yeah.
But
Well,
but I guess that is the thing. You sort of, as a region, like as the
hmm.
Northeast, you sort of think like there hasn't been anything come out of here for a while. And it was absolutely incredible to see Sam's sort of rocket ship to stardom. Like because for a little while we were sort of like the band sort of like doing like really well in the scene at the time. Um, and then you saw Sam just like shoot to stardom, and it was like, wow, like, and he makes it possible for anyone else, from a working class background. He ultimately sets the precedent of like this is what can be done, like believe in your dreams because it can happen. And
Yeah,
to see a friend do that as well, it's been incredible. And like I say, like my one of my best mates in college, Dean, like to see him along for the journey, and you got Drew and like Joe Atkinson used to be in one of the local bands, Lisbon at the time, that were doing pretty well and stuff. So like I say, it's just like it's a melting pot of musicians in the Northeast that you just see like all support each other and all like to see and to be happy for each other when each other do well.
yeah.
So it's an incredible scene. It really is.
Another one, another guest I had on actually, I forgot to mention him was Mark Wilson for the PV Wonders.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I think they've just had a name change. I think they've got the Wonders for their name.
Yeah, yeah. So I heard this is funny. So I was bumping into Ollie in the Clooney quite a lot, and they were contemplating their name change. We're like, I don't know what change to. And they were going through all these like really cool band names, and I thought to myself because they're obviously a very tongue-in-cheek band, and I just thought it was so PV Wonders to come full circle and just call themselves PV. So I found that
Hmm.
really funny, but it is a good name.
Yeah,
Very
a
good.
class boy, him.
Yeah,
It was
he's
a really
funny,
good
man.
chat with him. So
Yeah.
I mean, like back to the band then. So obviously, as you said, Sundance in 2015, and then kind of the name change in 2016, and for then on, really, it's been relentless. Releasing music, obviously, your first release on Spotify anyway is a demo of that dress, which has
Mhm.
then been given a proper release 5 years on, 2021.
Mhm.
But the constant sound of the band, it's quite kind of rock. I see that you've had a lot of support through like the Amazons and Twin Atlantic are a couple of bands that kind of I've looked at and seen that you've been supporting quite a bit. So you're kind of in that mold. How do you think the sound has evolved in the
Hmm.
10 years?
Yeah, that's a really good question because this album specifically, The Big Sad, is quite a left turn for us.
Hmm.
Um, it's quite like what I would like to say is a bold move for a rock band that maybe all your fans are expecting a certain sound. Like like I say, we're a rock band and we've been primarily rock thus far. But like yeah, The Big Sad is different. It really is. It has its rock moments, but it really is. It's a little bit more self-indulgent, I guess. But I feel like there's a certain level of respect you have for bands for doing that as well. Like, one of my favorite bands, like Radiohead, it gets to a point where you kind of like don't really care what people want to hear anymore. And it's like, Marmite, you're gonna love it or hate it. And that's kind of what The Big Sad is. I guess it's like it's a collection of songs that aren't necessarily what we've done before, but the songs that exist. And I'm not exactly willing to just um categorize ourselves as a rock band and not follow our heart. Do you know what I mean? I'm not willing to do that, especially 10 years in. I think you just got to be true to yourself. So yeah, primarily we have been a rock band, and we are still a rock band. That's the thing. Like, it doesn't mean that the album three is not gonna turn it up to 10 and go full fuzz again. But I kind of just for this album, I kind of made a few rules for myself that when when you think our chorus is coming up, this is the time to press the fuzz pedal, or all these rules that you've made
Hmm.
for yourself in the past. I kind of just maybe like you turned it a little bit and just thought, like some of your favorite albums don't even do that. So why do you constantly feel like you have to follow a certain set of rules? Um, so in that respect, I feel like the Big Sad is beautiful for a completely different reason. It sort of allows itself to be vulnerable, and it allows itself to be something that maybe people aren't necessarily expecting. But I do feel like it'll be a grower, and I feel like it'll be a real moment in our career.
Do you think that like after those like a decade of kind of making and releasing music, do you think like with this album you had to kind of release it for yourself?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like I say, I mean, for far too long, I've sort of like catered for
Hmm.
an audience that are expecting rock songs, and I've got so much respect for the people that have supported us throughout this journey. It's not a diss to them. It's just a sort of like, but do you know what? Actually, to make a U-turn on that statement, what's been so surprising is the people that are. It's been all in my head, man. Like the people who I thought would maybe turn their nose up to some of these songs, like a song like Final Exit, which is a little bit more like 90s-esque. Like, I was trying to write my version of There She Goes by the Laws. That's what I was doing. And the people that I thought might turn their nose up and go, oh, I prefer the earlier stuff, I've fallen in love with these songs, and they've made that very, very clear to us. And that's really reassuring because, like, maybe sometimes this is just the lesson that you have to teach yourself and go through to realize, like, hold on, like, you don't have to cater for anyone else. The songs are the songs are there to be written and released for, like, if you believe in it, then other people will believe in it. You've got to stop categorizing yourself like this. And I feel like
Hmm.
a lot of bands do this. They feel like they have to produce the next Radio 1 rock song. It doesn't have to be the case. You just got to be yourself. And it's been a long journey in 10 years, but that's where I've landed.
I think I mean, the sound of it is fantastic. What I got for on first listen was sounded a bit like the Doves, like Dove
Yeah, I get that a lot, man.
album. And I don't know if it's because it's the three piece and like the bass is quite prominent. I don't know if that's maybe a feature of like bands with just three members that the bass takes a bit more prominence. What do you think on that?
Yeah, yeah. Well, weirdly enough, this album was like basically it started being written as more or less a solo project. You know what I mean? It was like I'd locked myself away and like demoed, and you hear like sort of like where it goes at the end of Lost in the Moment. If you're familiar with that song, it
Hmm.
it I guess it's the song that sort of like it's the quiet loud quiet thing, or it's sort of like it it reaches a level of what's the word I'm looking for? It really like hits you when it kicks in. And I feel like suddenly you have that rock moment and then it pulls back down and it's a rock moment. And I think everyone might be expecting to hear like a third chorus there at the end. And it was a conscious decision to go down a more psychedelic route, a more sort of like meander the way out of the song. And I actually recorded the bass. It's like really melodic. I recorded it on acoustic guitar, which I down tuned on Logic. So like maybe those decisions have sort of like cut through a little bit more. Um, but I think ultimately the Big Sad is big in places where it needs to be big, and there's a lot going on in something like Lost in the Moment. But then you have the songs that are a little bit more raw that let the elements shine through naturally. Like it be the drums or the bass or whatever it is. They all have their moments and their prominence in the right places, I feel.
Hmm. And like you say, like it started out as kind of a solo project. So, like obviously we had um, a worldwide pandemic and stuff like that. So is that kind of when this
Yeah,
solo stuff would have started? Because obviously there's that kind of couple of years gap in the market.
well, this is the thing. No, no, I want to get something clear here. Sorry, I might have used the wrong terminology there. That it wasn't a solo project as such. It's more so the writing process this time
Yeah,
was
yeah.
was a little bit more along the lines of maybe just like someone like Kevin Parker, Tame Impala, just locking yourself away and discovering all these new sounds and ways you could go with the songs that perhaps
Hmm.
you might not have considered if you are in the rat race of releasing a single every 2 months and trying to like pump out the next Radio One track. And that's what I mean by that. It's a sort of like it was a different process this time. But then there are songs later in the album that do, and I think you can hear in like Woolly Thunder and My Abacus and songs like that where it does have more of the sort of like the old formula in it of getting in the room and I've got a new idea and then we all start jamming along and
Hmm.
looking at each other and having that eureka moment. But yeah, my point was primarily that a lot of the songs started as just like locking myself away and demoing and then introducing the lads into the studio and asking what they think, what they might, you know, like I say, it was just a different way. It was just a different way of doing things, and it was a little bit scary in a way, I guess. It was just like, where is this going? But it's almost something that I just need to get out of the system. I mean, a song like Lost in the Moment wouldn't exist the way it is without locking yourself away in the demo studio for like weeks, and really contemplating on where a song can go rather than thinking, um, we'll just go to that third chorus and then we'll finish. There you go, you got your radio song. It's like, no, like it has an elongated intro. It's a total a total U-turn on really it's like ripping up the rule book really of like what you should do for a single. You've got a minute long intro and you've got like a minute long outro, and in between you've got like a really like simple song.
Yeah, it's the drums in that as well. It's the kind of the constant beat there as well.
Yeah, it's relentless, I'd say. I
So,
just
like,
had
as I
the
said about lockdown, then how was kind of lockdown, COVID sort of time for the band?
um I guess uh, it was a time of uncertainty, and it was a difficult one because during this time you watch all of your friends' bands like split up or give up, and it's really sad. If we're just going to talk about music, because obviously there was a global pandemic. It's not just all about music, but it was
Mm.
just. I'm sure everyone can feel it was a time of uncertainty, but being from the perspective of a band, I mean, put it this way, like you're always swimming against the tide. Do you know what I mean? You're always like you're always trying to. It's a saturated market. You're a needle in a haystack and you're constantly trying to prove yourself to the world. And then when the world shuts down, you have a split second of just thinking like, what is the point? What was the point of all of those years of graft and building up and pouring money into touring? It's an expensive game. Like people just think,
Yeah,
bands just, oh, they tour, they have like the life of luxury, they get to be a rock star or whatever. No, no, things cost money, man. Like, look, you're paying crew, you're paying a van, you're paying for your studio time, and a lot of the time the returns on that are not massive for a band like our size, like or like where we were in 2020 when the pandemic kicked in. And you do often think during that time, like like what happens now? Like we've got the government you're meant to put your trust in, putting out adverts for artists and ballet dancers and musicians to get basically they might as well have said, get a real job. He
yeah,
hasn't got an IT. Do you know how patronizing that was? Like, these are the people, do you know there's never any funding for the arts. The arts are the last in the queue. When Brexit happened, to tour Europe now, bands have to pay something called a carnet now, which is basically a £600 bill to be able to leave the country with your equipment. So that adds it never gets any easier for bands, is the point. And then
mm,
the global pandemic kicks in, and then you have your own government saying, yeah, get a real job. But when they go home, they switch on their telly, they switch on their radios, they listen to their music. Where do they think all of that comes from? Like, where do you think that comes from? They are allowing venues to be shut. They're allowing all the iconic places like and what could be iconic bands split up because there's not a network of support for musicians other than musicians themselves and supporting each other. That's how, and I hope that I speak on behalf of, like, let's just even say the UK music scene on that.
oh, I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will because I mean, me as a music fan, I was angry at that kind of that rhetoric for the government at the time,
Mhm.
and that's just me as a fan. So for yourself,
Yeah.
actually in the industry, to be kind of to be told that because it's basically saying that what you do is worthless, and that's not
Exactly.
the case
Exactly.
because what people like yourself do
Mm.
is is make people happy, make people like
Yeah.
myself happy.
Can you think of any other profession that you would literally risk being you basically and when you're in an upcoming rock band, you're poor. You're poor as hell. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And any penny you get, you pour back into the band because, like you say, you want to make people happy. You want to give what you feel like you can to the world. Like this is what we were destined for. Like there's something about the creative mind that can't just sit behind a desk, and that can't do the 9 to 5. I don't know what it is. Like it's just not an option, Like that's the way I see it, anyways. And I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. So like we go above and beyond to tour to the process between writing, recording, mixing, mastering track, it's expensive. Do you know what I mean? It is, but we do
Yeah,
that because we want to give. We want to give, and we want to be acknowledged and appreciated for what we want to do. And we're all fighting for the same thing. So yeah, in a global pandemic, to be told that it is hard enough, anyways. Like it really is. You don't need to kick the while we're down. Like this isn't a good time. You know what I mean? It's don't rub salt in the wound. We already can't tour. We already can't, we released our first album during the pandemic. Oh man, to build up 5 years, 5 years of relentless touring and like I say, like pouring everything in, whether that be money, time, whatever it is, and then to have to release it during the pandemic at the point where you need to tour the most, at the point where you need to reach your fans the most. We couldn't do any in stores. We couldn't do any, in stores for starters are like you get a ticket to this gig if you buy the record. So you do 200 cap venues or whatever, or even
yeah,
like 100 cap record shops or whatever. You're adding to your chance of really proving yourself, whether that be charting or you know what I mean. We all know what the end goal is.
yeah,
But yeah, to have all that ripped away was really, really hard. And it takes a certain mindset, I think, to be able to get through that. And like for example, our very still very good friend Tom, who played bass for us at the time, he just had a change of heart and he was like, I've had this time to think and I feel like I want to do something else. And fair enough, okay. So we got through the other side of the album campaign and he went and did his other thing. I mean, like I say, we're still really good friends to this day. It's just
mhm,
not for some people, but me and Jack just have this level of drive that, like, maybe other people just don't have, and it kind of is what it is. Like I say, it takes a certain mindset. So we got through the other side, and we cracked on and persevered. And I think when times get tough, I feel like this is in any what I've learned in life so far is that when times get tough, no matter what it is, if you persevere and you persist, you can still do it. Like you can't give up. If it's something you truly believe in, you cannot give up. Um, you just can't because it's at the end of the day, what happens when we give up? It's all for nothing. And if you still feel
yeah.
like you can give. So well, this is it. And then we end up, fast forward a few years, we end up touring with one of our favorite bands of all time, Pixies. We get to release our second album, and it's things that maybe if I could have a conversation with myself 5 years ago, it would just be like, just persist and don't worry because everything's gonna be okay.
Yeah, and this is the thing. Like when you look at the comments back then for the government, and then you see it's no perfect now. There's still venues. There's still a lack of venues and stuff like that. But I think like guitar music is thriving again. You're
Hmm.
seeing all these. I mean, a lot of the bands I interview are new bands that have maybe just started during lockdown or whatever. So it's been a help in that way. It's been
Well,
a help for kind of new bands that are maybe had a couple of years to be able to kind of hone their craft. But
the,
I
that's the
mean, the
positive side.
industry's thriving now.
That is the positive side. I mean, we're just talking about the negatives and the impacts of bands that already existed. But out of lockdown did come a lot of positivity of new bands. Even if you think of bands like what they call the Dead Pretties. And I think they went through the lockdown period, which and then started sort of like writing new music in that time and now became Wonder Horse. So like I say, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and persistence is key at the end of the day. And yeah, maybe the positivity I can take from that time is starting to write the Big Sad, and it's called the Big Sad for a reason. It was a it, can you swear on this podcast?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, it was.
Encouraged.
I'm not sure if shit is a swear word, but it was a shit time. But you know, like I say, the album's called The Big Sad for a reason. It's about that time and it's about coming through the other side of it. And it's about coming home, not chasing the industry anymore. Not, oh, we have to go to London to record. We have to, you know, if you don't work with a certain caliber of whatever, you won't get this or this or this. It's now we came home, we stopped chasing, we produced this ourselves, and I feel like under pressure, you produce a diamond. And
Yeah.
that I feel like that's what we did. And this is a story of coming out the other end of a period that you can call the big sad, and come out thriving.
And so, like touching on that, then you mentioned getting to tour with Pixies. So
Yeah.
you've been on tour, you're going back out and tour across Europe later this month with them. So what's it like? Kind of is that a pinch me moment? Going out and tour with a band like that?
Yeah, get in line of the bands that want to support Pixies. Do you know what I mean? The possibly, or if not the most important alternative rock band of all time. Any band now, you ask what the influences are, the Pixies are one of them. You know, they might as well have invented the rolling bass line. They invented the do they call it loud, quiet, loud or quiet, loud, quiet? But you know, they just invented a whole genre themselves, and there never has been a band like there never was a band like Pixies, and there will never be a band like Pixies since. You can try and replicate it, but it cannot be done. Like it simply can't be done. It's they are a monumental band to guitar music today. Um, and to be able to be a part of that and support them, it's
Hmm.
more than a pinch me moment. It's something that I never thought when I was in school, I was listening to Pixies. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's not just like a thing of oh, in the last few years, I started listening to Pixies and oh, isn't it great we got that tour? This is like a real life dream come true, and don't take a second of that for granted. Like, I'm sorry, I get quite passionate when I talk,
No,
but
that's what I like to hear.
honestly, mate, if before this you asked me to name three bands that we think would be the ideal support for to dream to support, Pixies would have been the first band I said. Do you know what I mean? We can all say the Beatles are our favorite band, but we're not supporting the Beatles anytime soon. Do you know what I mean? And after after that, it's Pixies, and I feel like a lot of the press stuff and that, when you get asked in interviews it might come across like you're just saying that, but it's a dream come true, and to not only be able to go away with them once, but for them to like us so much and take us under their wing and go away twice, and now three times is just like it's insane. It's absolutely to me it is insane. It was an impossibility a few years ago, and I feel like if you put enough manifestation and but the manifesting, it's not just all this, I'm not, it's not like any spiritual stuff. It's the manifesting is the hard work. It's that we can do this, we we
Yeah,
can we can prove to the world what we can be. And I feel like to be invited on a Pixies tour is kind of more than a nod of approval. So yeah, I mean, I've babbled on about that, but you can say it does mean a lot to us. Yeah.
yeah, totally. And I mean, like I know, like what you're saying about the kind of the problems in the industry, like as a band and all this stuff you face. Yeah, like from starting at the podcast in lockdown, through the contacts I've made in the podcast, I started managing a band this year.
Oh, nice.
So I do kind of see the problems, obviously on a lower level at the moment. But I mean, we have played kind of decent gigs throughout Glasgow. We played Tuts twice and all that. But you do see the pitfalls and the costs of it, which the
Yeah.
fans don't see. The fans don't see everything else that goes into it. So I kind of I feel you.
Of course, man, and this is exactly why it's so important to if anyone does get a vague understanding of what it really takes to be a band, especially in 2025, is buy that ticket in advance, buy that record, support the bands because you just never know when that band are going to be facing a crisis, whether that be financially or whatever, and they quite physically can't do it anymore, physically or mentally or whatever it is, and people in life can only give so much. And I feel like at a day and age where there's a lot of taking, there's a lot of just, you've got people aren't really buying records anymore, let's face it, you know what I mean? And it's like it still matters. If you love a band and you want them to keep making music, you have to buy that record. And I know the cost of living crisis, I know times are tough. Even just anything like a pre-save on Spotify. Bands bang on about that a lot, but it does really mean a lot because the more pre-saves you get, the more how do you say it? Curated Spotify playlists you'll get,
Hmm.
which reach a wider audience, and then there's the domino effect. They'll tell their friends, and that's quite literally how it works. And it's all a game of chance because you need your fans to put everything on red and really bet on you. You know, you need your fan base to support you. You really do, and it's not really much to ask for. I think when it's like like we've been through this in terms of like bands give. You know what I mean? And sometimes bands might announce a tour, and then I don't know, like you see bands canceling gigs and tours and stuff, and it's because maybe just maybe they had 200 people that were going to show up on the night and buy a ticket on the
Yeah,
day, but they didn't know that, and they can't afford the costs of touring to risk showing up to play in front of three people. And we've all been there and done it. The one thing I want to sort of like portray in this podcast is like I'm not scared to talk about anything. I don't think bands are transparent enough. I think everyone likes to be the cool guy in the corner and pretend everything's cush until you see a band split up, until you really see what was going on or whatever it was. But every band on any level faces hardship. And it really is about supporting each other, having a support network, and having your fans really believe in you and put it on red and sort of, I guess, like, I guess for lack of a better term, it's like putting your money where your mouth is, isn't it? It's like, if you believe in a band, it's sort of like invest in them because then you will keep getting, you know?
yeah, and I've seen it kind of like last year. I went to see Jack Jones, frontman of Trampoline, just brought out
Mhm.
his solo album last year. I went to see him at the Poetry Club, SWG Free Poetry Club
Mm.
in Glasgow. And between me, him, Jack Valero supporting, I knew the photographer as well. I knew the guy, I knew the barman. And other than us five, there was another five people there.
Mm.
There's 10 people in this room to see Jack Jones, and I thought that's an absolute disgrace, man. Um, and he stood and talked to us, and he's like, we sold like 60 tickets, but people just didn't turn up. But there was a football game on.
Yeah, yeah,
Celtic were playing. Celtic were playing in a semi-final, which at the time wouldn't have been announced when the tickets went on sale, stuff
yeah.
like that. And a lot of that fan base would have been at that game. And then the following week, obviously the band that I manage, the High Flats, they played the same venue, and there's 150 people there.
Mhm.
And you're like, this guy's been a touring musician for X amount of years, and there's nobody turned up to his show. It was horrible. And
Yeah, man.
that's it can happen. It doesn't matter how established you are.
But this is it, man. And like I say, everyone has the same problems, but on every level. And in a world where there is like a significant dropout on tickets right now. Sorry, here's my pooch. I'm just gonna see if he's gonna bark or not. So in a world where dropout is substantial, it's like you can sell, even if you like, let's say you're playing a 300 cap venue and you've sold 300 tickets, it doesn't mean 300 people are going to show up. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's because it's a lot more fickle. And to be fair, I feel like a big impact on that. Let's just change back the scenario to tickets not being sold as well. Is Other gigs are so expensive now. You've got your arena and stadium gigs that are like minimum. The bare minimum is like the average gig ticket now is like 80 quid. Like
Hmm.
I can't afford that. I can't afford that. Do you know what I mean? And you've got to like you've got to pick and choose what you really want to go to. If you buy this £80 gig ticket, you can't go to these four other gigs that were all like £10 each, Because
Well,
when you know what I mean, it's like
this is a funny thing as well. So, like, obviously, the Hydro, obviously a big venue. Like, I've seen Paolo Nutini there, £70 a ticket, and then the next gig I went to there was Paul Heaton, and he's £35 a ticket. The same venue,
Mhm.
he's probably got more people in his band as well. And you have so how come some people can charge half the price and other people are doubling it? Now,
Yeah, this. I do feel like I'm going to give a lot of people benefit of the doubt because I feel like a lot of this is like ticketing companies that might take advantage of a like a fan base that will pay a lot of money.
Mm.
But at the end of the day, if the artists are aware, they should. And a lot of these artists were, they were working class at one point. They were like struggling to pay their bills and stuff. And the time in the UK at the minute, especially, is it's tough times. You know what I mean? Financially, it's tough times, and it's like I feel like if you're a band that is very well aware of the working class situation, you kind of need to like you need to play into like looking after your fan base as well. You can't be. I feel like it's exploitation at some point. When I see parents of kids who want to go and see Taylor Swift or I'm trying to think of another example. Maybe, I don't know. I don't want to just throw names under the bus that I'm not like, let's just
Yeah.
Taylor Swift as an example. Those, so I've heard some stories of tickets being like thousands of pounds. And when you've got
Yeah.
like a 10-year-old daughter or something that's going, oh, please, please come and go. And as a parent, you're like desperately just want to make your kid happy. And those are the costs now. It's like it's outrageous. It's outrageous. And it doesn't necessarily like a cost of living crisis should be reflected in like, for example, when we're talking about, the government and stuff not necessarily looking after musicians at a time of need, we should be well aware that like, well, we all need to look out for each other, like and going forward, like clearly the government or the funding or whatever they don't have the music industry's back. So then why should the music industry suddenly be taking advantage of fans when it comes to kids wanting to see their favorite pop act and stuff? And then that directly impacts people's ability to go to smaller gigs and support not only smaller bands but smaller venues. And it's really sad, a lot of the venues we did on our like on the way up have now closed.
Yeah.
And they were iconic venues. They were venues that you go, oh my God, like, I don't know, the White Stripes played here. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
wow, a moment in time. This is like history. We get a place, like this tiny room that the White Stripes played. Like, you think of like one of the last ones standing, the Louisiana in Bristol. They've got posters. Everyone's played there. And if a venue like that was to go, it would just be such a loss for like the upcoming music scene for the small. Because like, are we gonna get to a place where the only gigs to play are arena shows? Do you know what I mean? Do people not want to support these smaller acts or smaller
Yeah.
venues?
And
Because I'm
that's the thing. There's no soul in those shows.
yeah.
Like these small venues are where it's at, and that's where the real musicians come through.
Well, look, this is exactly the point. It's like all of your favorite artists were started out at one point and they had to have a room small enough to play in. You can't just play, even I haven't played an arena yet. I can't play an arena. I've not even supported a band in an arena yet. It's like if arenas were the only option, then you're not going to have any new artists coming through. The best bands of all time in 50 years from now will cease to exist. They will never have the chance to exist because the support wasn't there from the foundations. And it's just so important to be supporting small venues and to be supporting upcoming acts. Because like I say, like there could be a band or an artist that write your favorite song of all time in a year's time from now. But that band in the meanwhile might quit because no one bought tickets in advance for their tour and they got sad about it and thought, stuff this, I'm gonna go and get a full-time job. What's the point? Um, that's the reality of the scenario. It really is, and it's
Brilliant.
already happened. It's already happened. There will be hundreds, if not thousands, of acts that just thought, "What's the point?" And they could have been the most talented songwriters of all time, and you just never know.
This is the sort of chat that you don't get on Sunday brunch. You know what I mean? This is where the real conversations are. So Mr. Lovejoy, you'll need to kind of go a long way to kind of compete with me.
Well, I must admit, right? I know that like the Sunday brunch is an incredible platform, and the minute we got there to the minute we left, they were so supportive and they were so nice on and off camera. I couldn't speak any highly of them. I really couldn't, down to the crew, and I think giving a band like us a platform at the end of the day was probably a little bit premature in our career. It was like an opportunity that like we absolutely had to snatch. It was an amazing opportunity. I honestly think it really benefited our career, and it's programs like Sunday Brunch that are giving bands a platform at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Like,
well, there isn't much else there. Obviously, we had Soccer AM, which is gone. but there
Mhm.
isn't that. I mean, that's why, as I say, I consider them my rivals, but I watch them every week because I do tune in specifically for what musicians on it, and it was surprising when I was looking. I thought, oh, there's that band that I'm interviewing next week,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
usually it is a bigger, more well established act. So for yourselves to win it, it was on the same week I was interviewing you. It was an absolute dream, really. But I've got a lot more out of you in this long format than the small bit you get. And what is the script with the day on Sunday Products? Do you go and perform that song at the start?
Well, I'd be inclined not to say if he didn't on air say this is a song that the band pre-recorded before the thingy, and we did. And I'm not sure if that's due to any logistics or any problems that they've run into in the past. It being like they used to do it live, basically. But yeah, so I would have been inclined not like maybe not to answer that and not throw them under the bus. But they did say live that on air. So yeah, when we got there, the performance we did was like 7:30 in the morning or something. So I listened to my vocal take after, and I was like, oh, you could have done better than that. But I was like, benefit of the doubt, it was early. But yeah, but the thing is, when you go live on TV for the first time ever as well, I was pretty nervous beforehand because it was all live. It was like in my head.
You did
Oh,
look
my God's
nervous at the start, but you seemed to grow into it.
live. Well, yeah, but like I said, they made me feel at home, and they included us as much as they included, celebrities like, Estelle and Matt Baker. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, like there wasn't a sort of sense of like, oh, this is like an upcoming band that we've given an opportunity and they're just, we're going to talk to the people that, I don't know, quote unquote, like matter or whatever, And it's like, I kind of thought maybe that might be the vibe because like, are we important enough to have a say? But they really made us feel at home and they included us in the patter. And I feel like that helped us come out of our shell a little bit more and made us feel comfortable. And yeah, I'm really happy with how it went, to be honest. I'm glad I didn't. I was just the whole time I was just like, oh well, here we go. I'm gonna get cancelled.
So so the album's out, as we say, 18th April. It'll probably be out as this podcast goes out. And then on tour with the Pixies. What's coming up after that? Are you able to tell us in that's coming up? I'd imagine festival season will be festivals and stuff.
We're not actually really doing any festivals this year.
Either.
No, but this is the thing. So this is another little secret of the music industry is you kind of don't really get told how to qualify for festivals until you already have a schedule in place. It's quite weird. And so basically like so to have a healthy festival season, I feel like if we started releasing music in like the September, October, maybe did a tour in the December or something, um, is sort of how you get uh how do I say it, picked for festivals, I guess. Is my understanding of it. But so then when we announced an album campaign in like January and stuff, like I guess it just wasn't meant to be this year. And it's tough for rock acts, like I say, I mean, I'm sick of hearing the term guitar music's dead or whatever, You said earlier in this podcast, guitar music's thriving, and it's such a good thing for someone to say that. Because it's never died. It really hasn't. It's like it's never gonna be dead. Like why do people keep saying that? Like guitars exist and they will be played. And
Yeah.
on most of like the pop records and stuff, there's the guitars and stuff. So I'm not sure why anyone keeps saying that. But it is a lot harder as a guitar, like a upcoming guitar act to get booked for festivals and stuff, I guess. Um but I guess the idea behind this album is we spent way too long not releasing music and not re necessarily joining the conveyor belt of next, 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 and building up some momentum. So what I personally want to do with our summer is record the next album, which been silently writing in the background. Um, so yeah, that should be awesome. Just getting the third record down and then starting the whole process again and proving to the world who we are.
Perfect. And what would we be looking at? Maybe a tour towards the end of the year.
That would be nice. Yeah, yeah. I'm
I'd
not.
like to see you up in Scotland. It'd be nice.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we played King Tut's. Was it last month? It was a brilliant gig.
Hmm.
I've played King Tut's quite a few times now. That's another one of the iconic venues where you come up the stairs and you see all the names on the steps, and you're like,
Yeah.
wow, they played here in X year. And it's just like, yeah, just going back to the venue thing for a second, that honorable mention to King Tut's and like the Clooney in Newcastle and stuff. But yeah, it would be nice to do another tour back into the year. It would also be nice to maybe go on a support tour and stuff. The thing is about the support tours is as you're a band building, it's amazing to be able to showcase yourself in front of an audience that might have never even seen the band name before, you know, like totally
Yeah,
tap to another audience. Um, and you sort of treat those tours quite differently because when you play the headline tours, it's great and reassuring to hear people like singing the words and stuff, and it's a different type of feeling to going out with like a predatory mindset of a support gig and being like, everyone in this room needs to be a fan of ours by the end. We've got 30 minutes to prove our point, you know? And I like the sort of like yin and yang of, is it yin and yang? Yin and yang of that scenario.
yeah.
But obviously we're going to with Pixies in a few weeks, so we get to do that again.
Well,
But we
I mean, that's what I'm desperate for with the band as well, is to get one like a support tour. I've been trying my hardest, asking the question to lots of bands. Pastel, we tried to go on that one just recently. Try to go on uh, cast one at the end of the year, but you can only ask a question. We've been offered a few and had to knock them back as well, which isn't ideal. I think we got offered one with the Lilacs and we couldn't do it.
yeah, well that's yeah, it's quite often is the case. Like it's quite often the case that you'll think like, oh man, like, you know, we've got this big gap in our schedule or whatever, and then everything will land on the same dates. So then you
Yeah,
only do the one thing because like everything was pitched at like everything is just so happened to land in the same month, and you know you only like one band, you can't be in two places at once. So that is often the case, and to get support tours as well. I mean, like I say, like bands should support each other, support their friends, support their network. And I'm a big advocate for that. So quite often what you find is bands will take their friends on tour as well. So it's even harder for bands coming up to get those support tours.
yeah,
Uh, so yeah, it's a sort of like it's a double-edged sword, you know. It's like you get the reasoning behind like, oh, we didn't get that tour because they took this band instead, and they might have some history with them or whatever. But at the same time, it's like it's gutting for you when you get pitched for something, but at the same time, it's like, well, you know, there'll be another opportunity that comes along, and
yeah. You
you're
just
just
need
glad
to
that I
keep
support
plugging
them.
away, don't you, with things like that? Because if you do get that mindset that you're not going to get anything, then you won't. You need to just keep charging on. But
Yeah,
so I hopefully a tour towards the end of the year. Um, album, as I say, out April the 18th. It'll be out now. If you're listening to the podcast, it's out. Um, Last part of the podcast, obviously, it's God Time for Heroes. I asked my guest to pick four heroes to come for dinner. Why are they your heroes? And what would you cook for them?
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
They can be anything as well. They can be dead or alive. They can be
Yeah.
musicians, sports people, whatever you want.
Well, my first pick would be Paul McCartney, and I would cook from. Well, I'm not a very good cook, you see. But I know I've read somewhere that he really likes his favorite food is a bagel with Marmite and hummus, I think, is his favorite snack, is his favorite like go-to.
Hmm.
So I'm capable of that. So I'd make him that. And I'd pick Paul McCartney because he's my hero. He's in my opinion, he's the best songwriter of all time, and we're so lucky to still have him here today.
Yeah.
With so many other greats on. Um, yeah, so I'd pick Paul McCartney.
I had a whole new admiration for Paul McCartney once the Get Back documentary came out, because I was always kind of more leaning to John Lennon, but when you saw everything that went on there and how there was times where it was just Paul that was kind of leading that album and making it happen.
Yeah,
I'd,
and I don't think he got enough credit for that either. Like the other guys had clearly their mindset wasn't there, their heart wasn't in it anymore, and he was desperately trying to hold together what was like the Beatles, you know. He knew it was coming to an end, and you could see his heartbreak. It was a really interesting watch because, like George Harrison, he is like he's one of the most peaceful, nicest blokes that ever lived. But you could even see George's frustrations in that documentary when
Mhm.
Paul was trying to try like song idea. And then George is like, he's like, oh, play it a little bit more like this. And as a songwriter, you know what that's like when you can hear something in your head and you just, for a split second, you just need the band to sort of like quickly before it goes, you know? And this is before we had like voice recorders on our phone to quickly get stuff down and stuff, you know? So he's like chipping away at the song and he asked George, can you play it a bit more like this? And George is like spitting his dummy out a bit and he's like, oh, I'll play it however you want me to play it. I'll just not play at all if you don't want us to. And it's such a shitty attitude, you know? And it was
Yeah,
sad it was sad to see that, but at the same time, it was the humanization of them was like lifting the curtain, you know, of seeing that, wow, even the best band of all time still had it's like watching yourself in a practice room with your own band, you know what I mean? It's like
yeah.
they still bickered over the same things that any band bickers over now. And I thought that documentary was just like such an eye-opener. I'm like, wow, yeah, it's
It's
they've
not so to think that that footage had been there all that time, and it took till like 2024 for people to see that footage. And that is nuts.
total time capsule. And like you could hear them chipping away at like the Abbey Road stuff and getting excited about that. And you can probably see why they put Let It Be on the back burner and was like, we want to record this album instead. So then obviously they recorded Abbey Road last,
Mm.
but it was released before Let It Be. And obviously it makes total sense with the last track being called The End, you know. Um, not that I'm just spitting Beatles facts now. I'm pretty sure everyone knows that.
I said Paul McCartney. That's a brilliant first choice.
Cool. Well, my guitar hero, I got two guitar heroes, but maybe I'll do them. Was it four picks?
Yeah,
So maybe I should choose one of these two. So I'm gonna either choose Jimi Hendrix or Angus Young. And I think I'm gonna go with Angus Young. Like as much as like Jimi Hendrix is like, you know, he was only around for like 3 years on the music scene before he tragically died.
hmm
And he changed the game. He changed the way everyone thought about guitar. And there's a funny story about how, you know, Eric Clapton was like almost scared of Jimmy's presence on the scene. He was like, oh no, I'm not like the big dog on the scene anymore. And like Jimmy's like can't even tune his own guitar. He's like, is Eric in the room? Like I need my guitar tuned. It's so funny. Anyways, like yeah, I mean, when I was younger, Jimi Hendrix was such a huge influence. But even before Jimmy, for me, was Angus Young. And my uncle Kenny used to drill AC/DC into a non-stop. And one of the first licks I ever learned was Back in Black. And still to this day, if you don't have like a tap and beat behind you, that riff, that dee 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 dee, is so like off kilter that I still would struggle playing that today a little bit because it's like it's just so imaginative in the most basic way. But if you listen to like you know Highway to Hell, Back in Black, the albums and stuff, like my two favorite AC/DC albums, his guitar work is just absolutely impeccable. Like, and he's an unsung hero in my eyes because like you know, we all talk about your Jimi Hendrixes or your Jimmy Pages, you know, all the Jimmys. But like I just don't think Angus gets enough credit. Like his playing is absolutely bef ahead of its time. Sorry, my dog is chasing a fly. That is the biggest fly I've ever seen, in fairness. It's like the golden snitch. Um, but yeah, sorry. Yeah, I feel like Angus Young is the unsung hero of electric guitar. Absolutely impeccable playing that, and he's the first proper guitar influence for me of wanting to play a certain way. I've always quite had a, although I play like alternative rock music, I've always got kind of like a bluesy tinge to my playing, you know, and
hmm
it all comes from Angus Young and Jimi Hendrix and just the certain sort of like decisions you make when maybe like noodling on a guitar or whatever. So yeah, and my pick is Angus Young. Man,
That's
sorry,
brilliant.
I've given quite an elongated reason.
I've 120 odd episodes, and it'll probably be the first time Angus Young's been picked. So it's always nice to get like a new kind of a new choice.
Yeah, that probably proves my point of he's just a unyoung Angus Young, an unsung hero, you know. And what would I cook for him? Well, they're Australian, aren't they? But live in Scotland? Is that right?
I don't. I'm not sure. Were they born in Scotland or something like that?
Maybe. Well, look, I know you're Scottish yourself, and I hope this isn't too cliche for you. I love haggis. I love haggis. Right? Shooters, I love haggis. I think I'd cook him some haggis and mash because you might be used to that, and I think you could appreciate the Scottish delicacy that is haggis.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with haggis.
Yeah. So, and I'd call him Haggis Young, and he'd probably laugh. I'm sure. Um, my third would be in maybe more recent years, an appreciation of a rock and roll lifestyle. My favorite book is Kitchen Confidential, Anthony Bourdain, and I think to cook a chef a meal would be a right laugh. So, and I think, I've watched all of his Parts Unknown and stuff, and I was, when he died, I didn't really know much about him, and it wasn't until he died really that I sort of like picked up that book and I started watching like Parts Unknown and really getting to know who he was because all of a lot of rock and roll like idols, like I don't know, like what another one of my favorite guitar players, Josh Homme, was like, sharing his disbelief and heartbreak and stuff, and I was like, wow, this guy like hung around with some like cool people and stuff, you know. I'm gonna like look into him. So like I read Confidential. It blew my mind. How the total, like lifting the curtain on it, like a bit like the Get Back documentary, but lifting the curtain on the culinary in the industry and what goes on in kitchens and how rock and roll chefs really are, you know. And
Mm.
then obviously he built his career. His book took off, and then he like he's quite like he strikes me as someone who like he doesn't like, how do I say it? I wouldn't say like he's a very understated person, you know? And he
Yeah.
just oozes cool. He just like he is who he is, you know, and like he's exactly who he is in his book. And anyways, that book fascinated me, and I think it would be pretty funny to cook a meal for Anthony Bourdain if that were possible.
Yeah. Class guest. And you could get him to cook you a meal. You
Yeah,
could
well,
get
this
him
is
in
it.
that
I
way.
would be like, "How Anthony, get in the kitchen. How Tony, get in the kitchen, mate." Like, as a hand. My boiled eggs on boiling properly. And okay, well, my fourth guess, this is where I'm a bit stumped. Because obviously I didn't know this was a thing until at the start you were like, you got to pick four. So I kind of like, at first I was like, yeah, I'll pick Angus. I sort of just randomly picked Anthony Bourdain there. But as my fourth, can you hear that fly?
No.
Oh my God, sounds like a turbine.
But when it's in the room as well, it'll always sound worse when it's in the room with you.
Yeah, I feel like it's like hunting us, it's like circling us, like a vulture or something. Um, just gonna need a minute for this one, if that's all right.
This is what I like. It's been a while for I had a guest in total turmoil trying to think of a hero.
Because I think you would automatically like, you would maybe list the obvious people, and in hindsight go, ah, I should have said this. I should have said this. And I know this isn't exactly like that much of a big deal. Just pick
I,
someone. You know
I
what I
think it is
mean?
hard though. I mean, I had a previous guest, I think, that tried to turn the question back on me, and I thought, I've never even thought about it. I asked this question to every guest, and when they asked me, I panicked.
Yeah. No, this is it. I'm panicking. I'm on my whole guess and I'm panicking. And it can be dead or alive, music or non-music, or Do you know what? Maybe I should just face the music and say John Lennon.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Like, yeah, Paul McCartney's my hero, but equally like, you know, like yourself, I sway side to side. One week one's my favorite, and the next week the other's my favorite. Um,
They are kind of there's massive differences between the two of them. Obviously, I see John Lennon as the political side as well, whereas
yeah.
Paul McCartney was like a pop master, really.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I would come at if it, with the Lennon stuff.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. So I'm not sure where I watched this recently. It might have been the Rick Rubin Paul McCartney documentary. I don't know if you've seen that, but he's talking about the sort of the writing relationship he had with John, and he says like Paul was saying that he always had a really happy upbringing and he thought that everyone just had a happy life until he met John, who obviously lost his mom really young. He never really had, I mean, correct us if I'm wrong, I don't think he ever really had a true father figure in his life and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And like he grew up quite like with a depressive mentality in the sort of like the juxtaposition of John and Paul just worked perfectly. Like when he was saying he would write a lyric, it's getting better all the time. and John would chip in with, it couldn't get much worse. Do you know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
that's the sort of like relationship they had that really helped those songs. And you can hear it in like When I'm 64 or Maxwell's Hammer, these like pleasant songs. And then you've got John who like Girl or like I don't know off the top of my head. But or even comparing their solo stuff, like you can really hear like where they're missing each other, you know? It's almost
Hmm.
nice to hear the songs completed without each other and see that who really brought what to the table. But you listen to Paul McCartney's Ram or whatever when I'm feeling quite uplifted, or maybe I'd choose like John Lennon's Mind Games or Imagine, Plastic Ono Band. They're like so dark, you know, they really are dark, and they have a certain element in them, a certain sort of like, and I guess you could sort of bring that back to the Big Sad as well. It's like they have a certain tone that is just like a melancholy, like a kind of sadness, but it really isn't sadness. It's like a nostalgic thing. And
Yeah.
I do feel like, yeah, I think an honorable mention would be John Lennon. God, as if I've just said that sentence. Um, like no one else has ever mentioned it. Um, yeah, I would say I'll choose John Lennon for all of those reasons. He's a hero, and this is the thing. It's like you call someone your hero, and then a lot of people might say, but these other things in his personal life and stuff weren't exactly ideal.
Oh,
I
yeah,
know.
we've been over
I'm
all
talking
that as
music.
well.
Yeah, well, it's I'm talking musically here.
Yeah.
But but but
I mean, well, that's the thing, though. I mean, see, when you start going down that route, there's not one person that hasn't got any faults, and that's how kind of. I mean, that I have no qualms in calling him my hero. I mean, I know some of the stuff he's done, like I mean, they talk about like drug use as well, and there's like they like see like Peter Doherty, for instance, like in relative times about you junkie this and junkie that, and you're like back in the 70s, everybody was on that, and it
yeah.
wasn't even nothing was made of it the way it is now. And obviously, I've just spoke to Peter's sister, and I mean, a lot of the stuff there was like the tabloids. What the tabloids made of it was a lot more than it was. But that's your heroes are your heroes for whatever reason, whether they've got faults or not. That's
Well,
probably why they're your heroes because they're real people at the end of the
this
day.
is it. Like people like to highlight a certain element of someone, but at the end of the day, we're all this is the thing with like cancel culture and stuff as well. It's like we are all human at the end of the day. We've all got things in life that we sort of like, like you look back and like school or who you were like in a certain point in your life or whatever. Life's about growing, and it's about changing. It's the people that don't change, which clearly, whatever. What can you do about those people? But like, I don't know. Maybe I look at John Lennon and I just think, yeah, you've got some things that you shouldn't be so proud of. And then he went on to advocate like, world peace and stuff. Did that person change? Probably. Did he? I don't know. You know what I mean? Who am I to say? I don't
Mhm.
know. But I guess, maybe it's a sore subject to talk about. But yeah, musically, John Lennon. And what would I cook from? Well, God, you got it again. What would I cook from? Oh, marmalade on toast. In that documentary, you seem to be addicted with a cup of tea. And that's something I could definitely pull off.
Yeah, perfect. Brilliant heroes, brilliant choices, brilliant chat with you today. The album sounding brilliant.
Nice one.
It'll be out now for all you listeners listening to the now. But I go and check out the Big Sad out now. Absolute pleasure speaking to you today, Adam.
Hey,
All the
thanks so much
best.
for having us, and thanks for giving people a platform to speak. So thanks, man.
Brilliant. All the best with the album. Um, hope it gets done well with everybody and hope to see you some point later in the year up in Scotland. It'd be really nice to see you. But an absolute pleasure coming on today. Thank you.
Yeah, I look forward to meeting you in person, man. Thank you.
Cheers. I hope you all enjoyed this episode of Time for Heroes podcast. If you would like to get in touch, the best way is on the Facebook page, Time for Heroes podcast, or on Instagram at Time for Heroes podcast, or Twitter at timeforheroespod, or drop me an email at timeforheroespod@gmail.com. You'll find Time for Heroes on all podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple, Google, and Amazon. Please leave a review where you can, share with others, and more importantly, enjoy.